So Leon asked me to do a bit of a presentation about what's next. Yeah, thanks for that, Leon. I'm very honored to speak to you. You guys being the experts in the field, very happy to do that. I'm gonna try and do it in 20 minutes. If you have any questions, please just shoot directly while I'm talking. I think that works the best. Otherwise, maybe we get lost in the woods. So to talk about what's next, I think a lot of the things we discussed today and yesterday are about kind of these topics. So I want to zoom in on that first a little bit. So, you know, we're talking about the layers, about workflows, how do you get data from A to B, about changes, versions, APIs. But, you know, before we can really, let's say next up, we want to define an API, we got to really think about how do these things work together. So I have a proposal for that I'm going to go through. It's just a proposal. It's nothing final, but it's something that I think will help maybe clarify the discussion, clarify your thinking, maybe trigger some ideas. Right, so question mark, how do we do this? So to get back to the start of things, what we're talking about now really with IFC5 is a layer that's just file-based. That's really simple. But even this one file, it kind of has a weird quality to it where things that happen first get overridden by things that happen later. You might not be aware of this, but the functionality is there, and it's kind of implicit to how we use the IFC5 data that this happens. So in other words, if you look at it like this, you say it's a super simple file, you create an object, edit that same object again. Then if those two edits somehow edit the same data, and I would be swapping them around, I might get a different end result, right? This is how IFC5 is supposed to work, and that's kind of the power of it. So let's say those two edits are two overs on, I don't know, material. You would get a different material if you swap them out. That kind of opens the door to multiple files, right? Because even though it's in a single file, if there's let's say an order to the things in the file, if you split it up, you get multiple files that still follow this order and achieve the same thing in the end. And if you think about what that means, well, each of these individual files are then no longer the reality or the snapshot or the way things are. Rather, they're kind of edits. So in another word, they're kind of diffs. And that's quite cool. And we already have this, so it's just a way of thinking. We don't need to change anything to get this. And that's really nice. So you can already see this because everybody's talking about these layers and you combine them. How do I change that? How do I change this? The thing that's missing though is deletes. So deletes are not in there yet. So you can override somebody's stuff, but you can't really take anything away yet. So that's the first thing that I wanted to show is up next, which is just a small change to the schema to allow this. So this is really close to what USD is already doing. Basically, both the inherits and the children get instead of just these are the children or these are the inherited classes, you get a bit more semantics there. So you get the append and the delete. And USD also has a set. We can talk about that, but the point is, in general, you're talking about editing instead of, let's say, snapshots. Same thing is true for attributes. You can already add an attribute. You can modify attributes. We need some way to delete attributes, I think. So if somebody gives you a layer, you want to delete something from it, that might be you want to delete an attribute, and maybe like this we can, right? So you set it to null, or you set it to an empty object. I prefer the null, but again, the point is we want to allow these edits. So if you continue this line of thinking, any questions about this? I hope this makes sense. Yeah?
How is there a mesh in that?
Sorry?
How is there a mesh in that?
Because this is just a contrived example. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So don't take it too seriously. Yeah.
What happens if you delete something and add this again with different value?
Great. That's, I would say, the same thing as a modification, but with more steps. Yeah. So if you then think about authoring, I think there's two ways we're doing authoring that we're already talking about, but we don't have a name for it yet. This is a name I propose. We don't have to stick to it, but it's good to realize that we're talking about two different ways of authoring. So the first thing is vertical, where you have two layers and you want to make a composed layer out of that. So this could be, file 1, file 2, file 3. Could also be something else if we go to APIs and blah, blah, blah. But for simplicity, let's say file 1, file 2. And then we have some kind of an operation to kind of merge these files, right? And that operation is interesting. So in USD, it's called a stage. But it's really creating a new layer. So it's an operation we do. Then there's a horizontal, at least that's how I call it. We have the horizontal composition, which is when you take a layer, that's version 1, and you add something to it, you get layer version 2. And this, again, this doesn't change anything about anything we've discussed so far. It's just a different way of thinking about it and a different way of discussing it. So these three things could be files, right? So it's actually the same as the vertical one, even if you want to think about it like that. So you have your layer version 1, and then you change something, and then you have layer version 2. The only difference is that you now forget about layer version 1, right? Because you have a new version of it. But in the end, you're doing the same operation as here. But here you're really creating a layer, and here you're kind of editing it, right? This distinction is important. I'll get back to that. So you can also do the other thing, which is I'm going to get two versions and create a delta out of that. And that's very powerful, because that's, you know, let's say if we want to transition from one way to another way of working, where people are really just uploading a bunch of layer files to a CDE or to maybe to OneDrive, right, or Dropbox, or they have it on a file system somewhere, you could actually derive the delta from that. I hope everything I'm saying here is all just piece of cake for you guys. If not, raise your hand, right? Anyway, so my idea is, which I want you to think about, and we can get back to it in 6 months, is that we need two sets of APIs for this, the horizontal one and the vertical one. And the way we distinguish which one to use is to basically say, well, if we have a layer per author, then suddenly these type of things starts making sense. So if you're working on something with 5 different authors, every individual author can change his or her layer. But if you want to compose all of them together and share it with somebody else, you can also do that. So we have this data format already. We can, I think, just use it for writing. We still have a gap in what to define when it comes to reading this kind of composed set of layers. And Thiago already showed some of the querying there. I think that's a great idea. It's in the right direction. We need to be very conscious about solving this in the right way. So if you think about what I just said, so you have 3 people: Alice, Bobman, Chico, and each of those people have a layer. And we want to create a composed layer out of that. I think what we should focus on is the API that allows us to do this. So the API that allows you to access these layers as if they are composed, because the actual composition itself is probably going to be quite hard to build in the same way everywhere. I think this is probably going to be a vendor-specific thing. So we should really focus, I think, on how to query. At the same time, you might also just create this composed layer as a new file, and then you don't need an API at all. So it allows for both ways of working. Also, if Alice wants to change her layer, she can add deltas to that and continuously make new versions of her layer. And that, again, that's also a different API. And it's not really an API, because we can already kind of do this, because it's just adding new IFCX files. So there's no complication added. It's just a different way of thinking about this. I hope that this is not all super obvious to you, and I'm actually saying something interesting. Although if it is obvious, that would be a great thing as well. So let's say Alice did these things, right? So Alice's layer gets to be version 2, then the composed layer also gets to be version 2. And that's also an important concept, right? So we need to think about versioning even after composition has happened. And if we take it further, our composed layer might be further composed by somebody else. So Debbie might have her, written to a layer, and the composed layer is kind of read-only at this point. You can't change it anymore because it makes no sense. The source of truth is, let's say, above the API. But this way, you're getting to actually compose your compositions. And that's, I think, really cool. So if I change something in Alice, I get a composed layer back. And I get a new composed layer at the end, which is also updated with the deltas from Alice. And if we do this well, it's kind of like Git. It's been talked about a million times before. We get, let's say, 21st century level of authoring. I think this is, again, maybe this is obvious to you, but I think we should focus on making sure we can do this with everything that we define. So the IFC XFL should allow this. The APIs that we build should allow this.
I have a question on this.
Yeah.
Like this, I think, assumes that there is a composition,
Yes.
right? But like, I'm not sure that our industry actually works that way. So let me give you an example. The wall that's behind you, right? The thing that we're looking at is a detailed composition of the wall, right? But an equally valid way of looking at the wall is the conceptual wall, which is just, you know, an extrusion, right? There's not one that's better. There's not one that's better than the other.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, for a particular purpose, you might want one or the other. So,
Yes.
so how does this correspond to that? I mean, and Bjorn was talking yesterday or today about also even for properties. Like you might have different values for the same property, which are all meaningful in different contexts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if you think of fire rating, maybe the fire rating is 60 minutes, but it's actually 30 minutes if you take into account blah. Right.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So the way I'm writing this down, it feels like there is one way to do this, but you could imagine there's multiple layers that you create out of this, and maybe there's a reference view that is, you know, somebody saying, "Hey, this composed layer, that's what I think is the truth," and you know, everybody should follow this. So maybe if you want to collaborate with people outside of your company, you define a specific layer composition that is the one that people outside of your company use. But maybe internally you want to switch some of these, and maybe Alice, Bob, and Chico on their own computer have a completely different set of layer orders, right? So the API needs to be flexible in allowing both a, let's say, default ordering and also a fluid ordering, right? And that's not simple to achieve. I'm aware of that. Yeah.
I think this is really great discussion. I like what you said about let's talk about this in 6 months. But I guess the way I've been thinking about this is that the standard has like 3 layers, and this, like yesterday and today, we've been talking in my mind about the lowest layer. I've got 2 files. I don't set aside where they came from and like who wrote it and what version it is. How do we put that together? And I feel like we're all on board with that, right? And then the next level above it is what do we call properties? Like what do we call things? And in that layer, there's a huge amount from IFC 4 and 2 that come forward, right? It's still going to be an IFC wall. We're going to use that word and the names of properties. And this is now, in my mind, a use case. Now that we got those tools, this is like a 3rd layer above it. And I think it's really helpful not to confuse this stuff with the composition, right? This is about, okay, how do I, as an author, present my teammates with a versioned, a way to access the versions of my file? How do I, as a coordinator, express some combination of these together, right? How do we track the flow of data through there? So I think it's super important, and it's building on top of everything we've done, and it's conceptually a separate problem. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah. So I don't want to get ahead of things. I think everything you talked about in the past 2 days is still completely valid. And that's why I think this is the up next part, right? So this is the next thing. And this is just a way to get the conversation started on this. So think about it, and then we'll get back to it in 6 months, indeed. Yeah.
Or earlier.
Or earlier, yeah. Come find me. I live in the Netherlands. I don't know. Half of the audience is Dutch, right? So, yeah. More questions? Yeah.
Just to be sure, do you think that Delta 1, Delta 2, Delta 3 is work in progress? And when you go vertical way, it is published? Do we can make this interpretation?
Yeah, so also a good point. So in my mind, it would be, so again, right, this is a proposal. I can tell you what I think, but I think we should discuss it. In my mind, it doesn't really matter if it's work in progress or not, because in the end, that's also what Angel said, this API layer, somehow, the way you compose these is going to be telling you which different layers you compose. So it might be a work in progress layer of Alice and the final layer of somebody else. If you want to do that, that's fine for me. Like technically it's okay. Probably it makes no sense for you as an end user, so maybe you should not do it that way, but technically it's all fine. Yeah, it's not a problem.
One last question.
Yeah.
So the idea of a revert point, the put on a revert point and revert for any reason, is just a software implementation. It's not a stuff to the domain, is it?
So you mean reverting, like you did something wrong and you got to go back?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think,
or in a state before or something.
yeah. So I mean that's a long topic. I think just the reversion can always be appended by inverting it, so that's okay. But I think usually if you want to revert something, there might be dependents that actually care about the fact that you reverted something, and then it becomes more complicated. So I think it's something we'd have to discuss specifically for BIM what we want to do there. I really don't know right now. But the point is that if you allow deltas to arrive like this, then you can also technically, I'm not saying we should, but technically you could actually record the full history of changes and go back in time to wherever you please. That's allowed, so that's cool. You could even branch off, you could do a pull request, you could, whatever you want, yeah. I think it's important to focus on the end user with how we do this and not really on all of the possibilities which are endless, I think, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to retract my question. It's also not really a question, and everybody hates questions or non-questions that are posed as questions. I think the problem with this particular example is for example, with the deletion. Let's say Debbie wants to delete an attribute on some sort of class, but that class is inherited by a bunch of occurrences. If you apply composition, then deleting that attribute on the class is no longer enough, because in the layer above, the composition has already applied that to everything concrete that inherited from it. Is this really realistic?
So,
or would you say that Debbie has no knowledge of everything above that API layer? Debbie only knows that composed scene? Because then I think it would work again.
I see David raising his hand. I think I know what you're going to say, David. Go ahead. Okay. So the point of this is not actually to do the composition in the sense of what we're talking about right now with USD. The point is really to collapse these layers into one, but the layers themselves still need to be composed if you're looking at individual entities. And that's the only reasonable way to do it, right? Because you want to be able to use a class here and then later only compose those elements of that class into your own instance, let's say. So maybe this is the wrong word. Maybe you should use a different word, right? Not composed. But the point is that these three layers are collapsed into one. Debbie has no knowledge about what's going on here. There might be infinite many layers behind this. But this is, on its own, a completely valid layers, and the classes and the devs stay intact. They're not removed, right? I hope that's clear now. Yeah.
I think conceptually, you can go through the composition and, I don't know, I would call it the composed model, not a layer, because it's just because we understand something. And you could freeze that, or you could keep it live. I think the conceptual diagram is the same, right? So when there's that second composition, it may flow live through all the way back to the original layers. There may be a cache point of some model. I think either of those could work there.
Yeah, either way, I do agree it's a bad name, so I'll think about it. But yeah. Yeah, you know the drill. Chico is nice. What about Debbie? Yeah? Okay. I will keep it 50-50, guys and girls. Yeah, okay, next thing then. Let's move on. Again, to make it even a step more interesting, you can, at any point, reproduce, because I told you, right? So if you have two versions of a layer, you can produce a diff out of that. So that means that at any point in this tree, you can say, okay, but let me create a set of deltas out of that actually follow what happened in the composed set of all of these layers on top of each other. And then you can make an API out of that, and you can stream it and whatever, right? So then what do you get? Well, you get something like this, where maybe there's a catalog of different, I don't know, electrical stuff. And changes happen there because the manufacturer has new versions or something. And it ends up with somebody who's doing MEP, but he's also producing his own changes, right, that need to be clash detected with somebody who's a structural engineer. The structural engineer is also producing these updates that arrive at the clash detection. And if you're thinking about these diffs as just, you know, little file versions, so these could be complete files, but ideally they'd be diffs, right, deltas, you can kind of start building interesting automations on top of that. So if you're now thinking speckle, then yes, it's speckle. And the cool thing about this, which I really like, is that there could be, you know, somebody new who plugs in without the overhead that you currently have for plugging into a current BIM workflow. If you want to plug into a BIM workflow right now, good luck, you know, connecting to a CDE. That's really difficult. Getting all of these files out and then converting them, that's really difficult. All of this stuff can be made a bunch easier. And if we include, you know, events or diffs or whatever you want to call it, some type of streaming into that I think further simplifies it. So for me, it's a logical extension. And I work at Cubus, and we're the guys below over here. And what we would really like is that we don't have to run the clash detection on the whole file every time, right? So we'd like to just know, you move the wall, I clash the wall, I'm done. Just clashing the wall, just getting the clashes out, that's it. If layers are edits, then a list of edits becomes a observable stream. And it can even be in real time, right? And you can do auditing on it. So who did what? When did he do it? Is that okay? This is an example I did a long time ago. This is real-time ledger-based, I called it at the time. But yeah, a stream of edits that go from Revit on the left to whatever application on the right. And if you think about edits in this way, you can do them. Why not do them in real time, right? They're super small, they're super fast. You could have a giant building, but the edits are tiny. Yeah. Yes. Speaks for itself. You might not want to share all your stuff, right? Why not make that a first-class citizen too? So you start with private data, but because it's this kind of a standardized format, and you have a standardized way of hooking into somebody else's data, we can filter it, and you can expose it to the outside world. Or if you have data rights, like, you know, permissions, you might have a contractor that can only see the elevators. Great. Hook into your data, filter the elevators, show to the contractor. You might not want every time you move a wall to produce a new version for somebody to look at. So you might actually condense, whatever you call it. You might make a milestone or a release or a draft version that actually doesn't pass all of the edits on. It kind of condenses them into fewer edits. And then whoever's on the other side of that can, you know, pick and choose and really only get notified if you're doing a valuable increment for them, not just any increment. Again, this is me clashing, right? Structural MEP, I get some changes, I clash, I get a clash. You could actually send it back to the original program, right? So David was showing BCF issues. You could do these kind of things too. Anyway, I think you get the point. There's a bunch of challenges with this, also covered already by Thiago and the workflow guy. So we need to somehow identify different versions before we can do this. And we need to think about that, maybe hashing. We need to have a concept of latest, maybe, right? The head of the stream, something like that. We need to have a way to identify streams too. So is it a URL that you can go to? What about work in progress, public and private versions? We need to think about that. Then the layer order definition, right? There's no single winning definition. So we need to somehow, you know, in these APIs, we're going to define, respect the fact that these layers might be fluid. Final thing, conflicts. If I calculate a clash between two edits of two different authors, how do I know that when I produce a clash out of that and it arrives at the author that it's actually the right version of the model and it hasn't already been resolved? It's an important thing to know. So you might need to have the idea of conflicts represented in this data somehow. It's also a thing to think about. Anyway, this was the streaming part of it. So any questions about that? Otherwise, I'll move on to the rest of the up next stuff. I'm already way over time. I don't know how Leon feels about it.
I love this. Take your time.
Okay, thanks, Leon. That's very nice. So that was the stream part. Any more questions about that? Again, it's basically Speckle, but open and standardized and IFC. Yeah? Oh, sorry. It's basically something you already know. Namespaces, extensibility, right? So you've seen the schema, I hope. And the schema contains like 20 things. And it's not yet complete. And also, to complete it in the sense that IFC4 or 2 are complete is really a big challenge, right? That would probably delay this entire thing by 3 years. It would be nice if we have extensibility where we can somehow say, you know, you can add your own data to support your own workflows, even though there's also standardized buildingSMART IFC data, right? And the shape that this is going to take is not clear, but you can imagine that if every piece of data is somehow namespaced, so this is not namespacing as the tree of composition and blah, blah, blah. This is just what name do I give my type of data? I could say that, you know, the IFC5 stuff starts with IFC5, the USD stuff starts with USD, and then maybe there's BCF and IDS, so that's buildingSMART that I want to add. IFC5 could also be buildingSMART, but you get the point. And because I'm from Cubus and I'm doing clashing, maybe because there's no clash definition yet, I can just say, well, there's this namespace Cubus, and here's my stuff. And I don't really have to care about what you guys think about it, because you can just ignore it, or maybe you never get to see it at all. If we do this, there's some upsides. It reduces conflicts, right? If we do this namespacing, the chance that we have the same name for something is going to go way down. It's going to guide standardization. If you think you already have a piece of data that you want to get into the standard, so into the buildingSMART namespace, for instance, you can make a proposal and work with it, and then, you know, display it working to people. And then if, you know, you convince enough people, maybe you can actually get into the standard, right? It's really powerful.
One question.
Yeah.
Like, would this, if you are creating the code from schema, would this be, could you still read this thing if you have like non-standard stuff there? So.
Yeah. So perfect question. This is a problem. So currently TypeSpec kind of assumes that all the schemas are known beforehand, throws it in a big pile, generates code, that's it. That doesn't work anymore if it's flexible. So we need to find a way to embed, if we want to do this. We can always say, you know, okay, if it's not part of the core, it's not schema checked at all. That's possible, but that's also kind of annoying, because then, you know, besides the standard from buildingSMART, everybody else is a second-class citizen. They don't know if their data is valid if it's in the IFC file, because it hasn't been checked. So would be cool. Would be cool if we can actually embed the schema, for instance, the JSON schema or the Open API. Well, I can wait. If we can embed it into the file, right? So then you can basically say, I have my own Cubus namespace thing, I upload my schema, and then I make sure that, you know, whatever data is in the file complies to the schema. And you can check that. Yeah.
One thing to add to that is that software can read it, and you can make an edit and push your edits as a new layer without destroying any of that data. So you don't, the software can read it and can present it to the user without understanding it, right? So that's one. And two, I can write an IDS that makes reference to custom things. So also, if I'm as a client, I'm like, hey, I need you to have these properties that my operator is going to use, and I'm going to make sure they're there. Then we can do that, and there's some measure of validation even without embedding the schema.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe to say that in a different way, the upside of all of this is that the data passes through your CDE or passes through your application, and you don't have to be conscious about this at all. So if you want to open an IFC file, you kind of have to know everything inside currently for IFC 2 and 4. For IFC 5, you can open it just fine. You can display the data inside, but you don't have to know what it is from the get-go. And that's a nice feature to have. We talked a bit about efficiency here and there. People are worried about the efficiency of IFC5. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic because of deltas, right? If we think about the changes that we do instead of the whole files, everything becomes better. The file size is smaller because it's only changes. The upload and download is going to be faster because it's a smaller file. The processing can be targeted, so you can recalculate your IDS just for the delta. The analysis is going to be better, so the clash detection is going to know what changed and is able to kind of make its own conclusions. And even if you do want to actually generate all of your, geometry from the semantic definition, and that's usually something that takes a bunch of time because of the booleans and the whatever, even that will go down because you have deltas, right? Because all of your existing booleans are going to be fine because they're unchanged. It's really nice. For binary serialization, if we do need it, TypeSpec supports it, but we can explore different things. So TypeSpec does protobuf, which I don't know if that's standardized yet, but it is very nice. And for efficiency, I think Thomas mentioned it. Right now, in the viewer and everywhere we go, we flatten this whole tree. So we kind of, we look at the data and we completely evaluate it and we duplicate everything that's duplicatable. And that's bad, right? So we want to do some kind of a lazy composition where the moment that you ask for an object, that's when we start figuring out, okay, so this object, what's the classes it inherits and what attributes do those have? And which children does it have and what does that mean? And should I get the attributes from somewhere else? And how many layers actually talk about this object, right? That's a difficult thing to solve. And it's something that USD spend a bunch of time solving. So we shouldn't underestimate this problem, but it's also very crucial, I think, to get this, let's say, 21st century solution. And the reason for that is databases, right? So if we just duplicate all of the data just by duplicating it, we can't edit it anymore because it's in a different shape. So we'd like to edit the source data as IFC5 is going to be describing it, but then also query it when we need to. And it's nice to be able to do that in a database so that you can build web applications around it, get a bunch of performance out of it, etc., etc. GUIDs, I don't want to get into this, but I feel like I have to. So, USD has names. We're currently 50-50 in the way of GUIDs versus names. I think we should decide. So IFC5 is GUIDs in a namespace, or IFC5 is names in a namespace. Right now it's a mix, but is that the right thing to do? I don't know yet. So if you know what this question means and you care about it, please think about it and tell me what we should do.
I think we can have both. I think we can have GUID as the way to refer. I think we can have GUIDs as the way to refer to things and have a display name.
Exactly, yeah. So then the identification of the object is always a GUID. Yeah, love it.
Still a part of GUIDs.
Exactly, it is still a part of GUIDs then. Yeah.
So just to clarify, because I think there's two separate questions, right? Is the identity of an object the concatenated list of all its parents and itself? So that,
Yes.
So yes. So if that's the case, it's always nested. Great. A lot of great things from that. And then the second question is each of those names a GUID, or can it be something else? I would say that those need to be unique within that level of the tree. They don't need to be globally unique within the world. So there's a sense where a GUID is giving us more uniqueness than we need. There's also the easier to debug is like real. Right? In the user interface, it says this, and like I want to go in and see what's going on. And it's us developers who are going to have this pain more than the users. And the users are going to get into it. And as this goes to, like, say, I kind of feel you've been talking about OpenCDE version 5 or whatever, the IFC5 equivalent of OpenCDE. As those become available, users will be getting into the data, and there'll be more application developers. And if we kind of have this, well, yes, the real thing is a GUID, but it also has a display name. and then we've got 3 things with a display name, and that's confusing everyone. But then we need to show the user the GUID, or do we just say, whatever, pick a name. You want to put a GUID, that's fine. You want to put something else, also fine.
I just don't see that's a problem in IFC 4 now, right? IFC 4 has a GUID and a name, and that's not difficult to debug, and it solves the problem. I do not want to figure out what happens to my path when I change level 1 to level 2. And then I have to go find everything that has a path with level 1 in it.
We could also give things names for the namespace and a display name. But basically, the identity name, do we want to make it a requirement that it must be a GUID, or do we want to allow it to be any string?
So that's the question we will ask and answer in 6 months.
Perfect.
Great. So some more concrete changes. This is the boring part, but it's important. Thanks, by the way, for all of the discussion. I do really appreciate it, even though we don't have a lot of time to get into this. So in 6 months, I'm looking forward to it. Proposed changes. So we want to check these files in the viewer. So if you mess up something in your IFC5 file, it's nice you get an error, right? We want to rename dev to specifier. It's a better name. We want to remove the type field on the devs and the classes. The reason for that is that when we do shared authoring, it's hard to... Oh, sorry, did I miss a question?
It was more like a comment. So the question of GUID, I would advocate that it should be a GUID, because if you're thinking not about a project, but if you have a big portfolio of many, many buildings all over the world, and you want to identify something because you want to capture experience data for a certain object, it's better to have a GUID than something that's just unique within the project.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, completely agree. So, yeah.
That was my comment.
Yeah, great comment. Thanks. Remove the...
I suggest to not wait 6 months and cover this before the next meeting.
Okay, but then maybe without me. I'm a busy guy. Yeah, so we want to remove the type field. It's kind of weird to have it. We want to move to more of an ECS idea. At least, I think we agree on this. I'm looking at Thomas. I think he's okay with it. So we want to move away from this idea that your entity has a type, like your object has a type. And the reason for that is it's hard to agree on types with a bunch of people. It's much nicer to say, well, my object has a bunch of data, and so it's probably this type, and so I'm just going to look at that.
This includes the current USD types?
Yeah, so they're all going to go, yeah. So what's going to stay is the USD-specific geometry components and everything there, but the type field is going to go, yeah. That's the proposal. If we bump our toes and it's a mistake, we can put it back, but I think it's going to be fine. We're going to redo the top level structure a little bit, because right now it's an array and that's confusing. It would be nice if it's more like an object, so you can extend it in the future without adding like an object to the first, array index. With a header, this is the wrong header. You have the right header, and then the data. And data is as it is right now. And then there's a bit of a format thingy to say, hey, which version of IFC-X is this actually? But that could also be in the header. Like I said, streaming, so add, append, deletable, nullable components. We want to remove attributes on nested devs, nested in brackets, because we generally want to move attributes out of devs. Also controversial, it's very different to USD. Yeah, I think everything should be in and over, but I think also the jury's not out on that one. Sorry, I'm rambling. Okay, enforce dev class relation to the schema. So we have a really specific way of setting up the dev and the class right now. I'm not sure if that's clear to everybody, and the reason it's not clear is that there's no way for you to find out. So I want to put it in the schema so it's clear, and then if you don't like it, we can talk about it. Enforce GUID as a class name. Yeah, for the class name, I think it is a requirement either way. So the question is really, do devs have a GUID name? Yeah. Arrays for namespace. This is a suggestion from Pasi, which I think is nice. So instead of having these slashes as a path, you got to constantly parse. If we're using JSON anyway, we can just make it an array. Yeah.
Yes. Is this on? Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that certain objects that are always the same, such as, just going back to what I was presenting, an object that defines a CRS that is, registered somewhere, so it should always be the same object with the same GUID. How do you make sure that this GUID is not actually unique? Like, who is going to be defining the GUIDs for those objects?
I like that. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, similarly to how you do it right now. So if you make a wall, and somebody else wants to do something with that wall, they have to wait for you to make it, and then the GUID is established, and then whoever wants to do something with your GUID and your wall can do so. So that's the thing. Somebody has to make the thing first, and they can make a shim or like a shell or like a placeholder of it. But somebody needs to be first to say, okay, this thing we're going to collaborate on. This is the GUID. Does that answer the question or create more confusion? I'll take that as a yes. Okay. Yeah.
You have 6 months.
Well, just to be sure, the structure for the file, the IFCX file, will be like that, with the layer name? No?
No. This is an example.
Okay, but you have a header. It's not straight to the array like today. So will be a header.
Yes.
Okay.
So the top level thing will be an object. That's the main change.
Okay, but my question, another question is, will be there different types of layers? Like, for example, timing layer is because we think a lot on projects. So projects, okay, you can revert the project for the time someone had made the change. But when we are GeoLeaf FM, so there is time. And also, like a pipe, I have an oil pipe, and oil pipe is going cracking, for example. And someone is working on a project to resolve it, but the pipe is going to change over the time. So I need this dimension, new dimension. So I believe types of layers would solve this, not only this of the time, but probably costs and other dimensions.
I think it's a good question. I don't want to presume I can answer it, but the header is gonna contain a timestamp. Does that help, or is that not enough by a long shot? What do you think? If you just know when when the layer was created, and then you can deal with that. And if you have a bunch of changes over time, each one of those changes in the layer will have a timestamp. Is that enough or not?
I have to think about 6 months.
Okay, it's catching on. I have one more slide. Anything else for this one? No? Okay. Yeah, so the future, I think we should experiment with all of this. So I will do that. You can do it too. Maybe we can figure it out together. I think we should experiment specifically with these diffs, the versioning, the code generation, databases, and the lazy composition. And if we figure out this kind of stuff, we can actually, catch up with the rest. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I talk to colleagues in different fields, it's like, the construction world is like, 10 years behind everybody else. So we're just reinventing the wheel and slowly catching up. If we do all of this, then we're suddenly ahead, I think. So maybe it's ambitious to do all of this, but if we do it, I think we're really in a different ballpark in terms of, how modern everything that we do really is. So for me, that's something fun to work towards, even though it seems out of reach. So I hope I can motivate you guys to think about this, and not just see the challenges, but also kind of feel me in the opportunities that we have to do something really cool here. So then there's the other side of it. I think we should talk more about the CRS stuff and about the properties and everything. Of course, I think that makes sense. But my main point was to kind of get you going on this new idea, or at least this opportunity that we have. So thanks. Any more questions, or is this all there is to it? Yeah, something about GUIDs?
No.
Okay, good.
Very simple and basic question. Where can we find these slides?
On my computer. I will share them through Leon somehow. I don't know. Oh, Dan. Sorry. Yeah. Great. Thanks. Anything else?
Can you repeat what is lazy composition?
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. So when we call something lazy, generally in programming, it means that you don't do the work until you absolutely have to. So generally, that means that instead of, let's say in this case, taking an IFC file and doing a whole bunch of composition work to figure out how the composition work for every entity, we just leave it as it is, and only when you ask for a specific entity do you actually do the work of the composition. And that makes it more complicated because then, on the fly you have to do it and you still got to do it fast, so that's hard. But there's a bunch of upsides because flattening the composition completely beforehand, so not lazily like we do now, is just a big waste of resources. So it's a big waste of RAM, big waste of CPU, disk, everything.
Are you talking about payloads?
Payloads what?
From USD.
Payloads from USD?
Yeah, it's quite like the same concept.
Oh, sorry, I have no idea. I'm not that well versed in USD. I'm just hating on it all the time.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I don't know. But send me a message. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Thanks a lot for your attention. I'm way over time, so thanks, Leon, for not interrupting me. And have a nice day. See you in 6 months.
Okay. Thank you. And hello, everyone. I would like to talk about this application ASBIM IFC5, which is basically what we have seen in the example before when we were importing this Revit model. Just a quick introduction for those of you who don't know me. I'm Michelangelo Cianciulli from Akka Software. Akka is a software company based in Italy. It was born 1989 and recently joined the OpenBIM movement with a clear mission, which is to transform BIM to OpenBIM. Basically, we contribute as much as possible in our possibilities to all buildingSMART International initiatives. In particular, we try to implement the standards as soon as possible because we really think it is the best way to learn them in practice. The technology that I'm going to show you is based on ASBIM, which is a cloud application, so everything happens in cloud, which as a base is a viewer, as we will see, but there are many plugins in which you can use a BSDD standard as well as IDS, but also plugins for BCF, class detection, and whatever. ASBIM comes in different flavors. For example, we have these customized for the BSI awards for the people submitting projects to share links with the jury in an easy way to make them view the submitted models, to adjudicate them, as well as one of the most recent evolution, which is ASBIM Infra, which is what we have done to contribute to the IFC 4.3 project. So basically, we participated in the various working groups, trying to learn as much as possible, and then transfer this into basically a viewer that we give for free to the users, to the working group, and everyone that wants to try it out, so that we learn along with them about all the new things about IFC 4.3. The same is about IFC 5. When we start learning about it was after the last summit, when we have followed the Lyon course. So we started gathering some ideas and started to implement it to see what is possible to do already, knowing that we will have to change it million times because the standard will evolve, will change, but we don't care about that because we think it is worth to do this to learn as much as possible about this new standard. So the first thing that you can do in ASBIM IFC5 is that you can convert all the IFC models into this new IFC-X format. Not because we think it's something that you should do, because in fact we think that IFC models have been created as such because they have a purpose, at least most of them, but well, we needed a way to engage the user. So if the user come, but there are no examples available, then he will probably not use the application. So by being able to convert your IFC models, maybe the user gets engaged. So here we see some examples. The first one being the Revit file, which comes nicely because it has it's quite simple, but has all the geometry there and all the properties that you can expect. So for writing these files, we basically used the BSI examples. In fact, we had to look at how to convert the alignment in this case. So it's not just about the building, but also about the infrastructures. This is an example from the RFI storyline of the rail project. And you can already do query by properties, filtering objects based on the values of the IFC 5 properties, basically. So some of the functionalities that you can expect from a viewer are already there. Of course, you can download the converted models so that you can use in your second favorite viewer of choice. So in this example, that will be the BSI viewer. So basically, you can double check that everything is fine. Don't mind about the transparency of the objects, it's already solved. But you can see that geometry is there, tree structure, all the properties, all the stuff, geometry, 3D, 2D materials, and so on. Also, the alignment, we used the BSI example as a reference to write our own. And basically, this is the same example that we have seen before, but shown in the BSI viewer. Of course, if you have another way to create the files, like, for example, this one, which comes from SketchUp, which is a different model than the one that we shown previously. This one was available on GitHub and basically shows basically different models put together. So again, you can use the viewer to inspect the model, select the object with all the properties. This one was nicely because it has classifications and other things that were available, not available in other examples. So basically, we also provide some specific functionalities for specific objects. This is the case of the alignment because, as we have also seen in the alignment working group, this is quite an important object, to say the least. So, for example, given our experience from the IFC Rail working group, one functionality that was much appreciated in our viewer was the possibility, as we will see in this example, this is the BSI example for the alignment. Of course, to select the single segment of the alignments with all of the data attached to it from the business logic, but also the possibility, for example, to have a plot, a two-dimensional plot of a drawing of the alignment. This is really good for the people who are used to look at drawings like this. So it was quite a good functionality that we propose again for the IFC 5 standard, being the business data still there. You can then have fun, like walking along the alignment. You can download the data of the alignment in tabular form, in DXF, the drawing, and so on. There are some things that are very specific to IFC 5. I mean, talking about space boundaries, which were already there before, but now maybe are given more importance. So at the moment, you can inspect all the relationships, and given the fact that in the BSI example there is attached the geometry, you can also look at it. It's just a surface, so we expect this example to grow and be more complex, maybe to have more data attached to it, and maybe in the future do something with this data attached. This is one of the latest examples from the BSI repository, which shows the fact that this example is not completely shown correctly. For example, the lines should be of different colors, and even the APSG code is shown when you select one entity in the properties, but not as an object itself. So basically, it is something that we have to figure out. So it means that we have to update constantly the viewer to be able to stay update with the standard, of course. Then, last but not least, there is this forum functionality, which is more like a chat, actually, where you can, for example, mostly post about bugs, which we like to call features. And in fact, you can also ask for new features to be added, and you will get in return more bugs. So it's a perfect place where you can ask for help and discuss about your models and whatever. You can share, of course, images, videos, links, and so on. Anything that you would expect from like WhatsApp chat or something like that. Now, what happens? This is our question that we had when you start mixing the USD with IFC5 workflows, where basically the first thing is that you can do some nice copyright logo infringement. So yeah, that was it. And we talked about this a lot, and I think this example shows just that if you add an over a property or a bunch of overs, the viewer is able to show the list, the strongest opinion and the list of previous opinions that are in the model. So it basically shows that, but I think that during the previous presentation, it was solved even more brilliantly by having like this severe error and less severe error based on the author of the layer. So really looking forward to implement something like this when this header information is defined. So basically what we are doing here is that we are editing the IFCX model manually for now, adding a stronger opinion on the value of the property, so that basically in the viewer you will see basically the strongest opinion and the list of all opinion that are there. So in this example, I think it was the isExternal properties, and you will get another property which is the same name but underscore all with the list of all the previous values. In this case, it was just one previous value. We are aware of the fact that editing can have some strong consequences. Take this example. I think it's very similar to what was in the IFC course, where you would inherit from a story or from the wall, duplicate the wall, and you will get some windows for free. So this basically shows an MEP export in IFC 2.3 that has been then converted in IFC 5, and then we manually edit it to create two more folders. The point here is that we are aware that it's not only about properties that can be overridden, but also about different geometries. So it means that we have to be aware, and we are trying to understand how to implement this. The possibility, for example, to show different scenarios based on the layers that are doing acting basically on the geometry to show different of this kind of overlapping opinions. So it will be for sure something that we are looking into. In this example, just shows that we easily added a couple of more floors. We are still not sure. We are thinking about what happens when you start deleting objects. We have seen proposal for deletion on floors that are or objects that are not in the file because they just happen after the composition. But we will try to think about this. Another thing that I would like to talk about is about, of course, the possibility to do federations, which is something that we don't have to worry about because IFC solves this brilliantly, but also the fact that we were talking about earlier, to be able to be very efficient. This is a medium-sized model, and you may want to edit it from the biggest to the smallest detail. So whether it is payloads or lazy composition or whatever it's called, our question here was if is a buildingSMART that should, because all the optimization that we do are done on our system, of course, but maybe, like in the case of the USD payloads, BSI can consider the possibility to provide some standard way to do, I don't know, level of details or stuff like that, that would make at least some of these things to be available in the standard, to be used in a standard way. So I think that for the many reasons that we have seen so far, and many others that we don't know yet, but we will only discover going forward to this, we always have been convinced, but even more now, that IFC should be at the root of interoperability. So I didn't know how to end this because it being a technical meeting, it's a bit different than usual presentations. The application is free to use, will be available, I think, at most early next week. There is the link if you want to try out for when it will be published. And I think the message that I wanted to, that I read this, let's make IFC the standard the global community deserves, was very well achieved during this hackathon, because I think there has been much collaboration exactly in this direction and in this sense. So thank you very much for your attention.
Questions? Where's the microphone? Any questions? Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, very inspiring.
There is a question.
Well, it's a little bit of a comment. Can you please let us know when this is available? I want to clear up. It's fantastic. And I want to be able to download some of these.
It's ready because we used exactly this for importing the SketchUp file. We only have to publish it, I think, at most, I would say on Monday at most, next Monday.
Okay.
So,
great. Yeah. Famous last words.
No, definitely not 6 months. In 6 months, it probably will have changed many times.
Just a very general, boring question. Did you encounter any difficulties when converting IFC4 to IFC5? Or difficulties or interesting things or whatever?
I would say not in converting, because having the BSI examples, there was one for building, which was the wall example, and one for alignment, which covered most of the files that we ever encounter. So it was quite a straightforward thing to convert. The most, not difficult, but strange thing that we had to deal with is something that is in the course. in the IFC course, it's when you have this wall that is duplicated, and the number of windows, it's not the one that you encounter in the file. So when we heard about this in theory, we had to listen to it a couple of times, but then we said, okay, it's like this seems reasonable, you just have. But then when you go and implement it, it was not working the first time, and we had to look at it differently. So yeah, that I would say it was the most, not difficult, but strange thing that we encountered so far.
And I don't really dare to ask because Leon is going to beat me on the way back to the Netherlands, but any difference in file size that you found?
It depends on the file, but yes, the IFCX files are much larger, but I mean, you can just if you do not pretty-print them, you already save a lot of space. You can compress them; they compress quite nicely, like the old IFC files. And we have seen that also USD has a binary format for it, which is very, very compressed, like optimized. So if it's a concern, I think there are solutions.
Great.
There. Right now, it's not a big concern. So.
Just one. Just one question. Is it ready for work with custom classes?
What do you mean by custom classes? In the examples that we have seen from buildingSMART, you attach this data IFC5 class.
Yeah, as the buildingSMART class, but if I want to add my namespace, so my own namespace, does it read it or ignore?
No, I should be able to read it. For keep in mind that when we have developed this, we had special cases, for example, for alignment and the special objects. The other are treated that you should be able to read them, at least visualize them. Of course, we expect this to change. For example, given the fact that now there is a schema, we probably want to look at how we can use that for reading that other way. So I would say you will be able to look at the objects even if only reading the information, like it's in the BSI viewer, I guess.
It's the same for the BSI viewer.
Yeah.
There's specific cases for meshes, transforms, but the idea of composition is completely general, and the viewer doesn't depend on code.
Yeah, visualization, I believe I can use USD, so it will work well. But the non-geometric data, would it work? I'll try it, and if it's work, I believe it's almost easy. No, it's not easy. The good way to say this, but it's. I believe it's will not have a great trouble to convert from EFC4, because you have EFC4. So if you use namespace EFC4, you translate it to Express to JSON. Probably it would work.
Yeah, it should work, but I mean, you will be able to look at the data. Maybe you will find many of the things that were in the file, like we preserve the UIDs and so on. So even if only to be able to look at the data, not doing anything with it, you should be able to. So I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, then thank you again, Michelangelo.
Yeah, I'll only be a couple of minutes, but just to give you all a bit of an overview of what's ahead. So we are obviously here in Budapest, and the next time that we'll have one of our buildingSMARTs hosted events will be the Spring Summit in Singapore. I'll talk a bit about that in a second. The next General Assembly will be hosted by Esri in Redlands. And again, I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Then we're in Berlin in Germany for the summit after that. The General Assembly this time next year, we don't yet have a host. We do have a couple of inquiries out, but nothing confirmed yet. So if you are a vendor in the room who could host, please reach out to myself and or Leon. It could be for the one in a year's time, or it could be beyond. We don't have anything confirmed past the meeting in Esri. So if you're interested, please reach out to us. And then hot off the press is that the Spring Summit will be in Porto next year. That hasn't been officially communicated yet, but will be next week. So you're kind of the first to hear it, but that's where we'll be then. We do have, amongst many other new web pages that are being published at the moment, this events overview page. So if you want to scan the QR code, that will take you to a summary of what you've just seen. So this is the summit in Singapore, be 18th to 20th of March. We will be at the Singapore Expo, which is the image on the left there, and the dinner will be hosted at the Marina Bay Sands, not on the top, unfortunately. But and there's a bit more information about the event on the webpage in here, and you can also register there. It's going to be a co-located event with BuildTech Asia, which expects 5,000 plus attendees over the 3 days. The venue is very close to the airport. There's a couple of hotels close by. All this information is on the website if you scan the QR code, and there are sponsorships still available. So if anyone here is interested, please reach out. And it's worth using this opportunity to mention that Nemetschek are one of the platinum sponsors. So Graphisoft will also be represented there under the Nemetschek brand. And also the OpenBIM Awards 2025 will launch on the opening day of the summit on the 18th of March. Michelangelo, you mentioned it in your presentation, and you submit pretty much every year, if not every year, and have been awarded special mentions, and you've won it a few times. So look forward to hopefully seeing a submission from yourselves and to anyone else in the room. I took over running the program earlier in this year, so if you're interested, if you have any questions, might want to submit for the first time, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Take the opportunity again to thank Graphisoft and the Nemetschek Group for their hosting, and special thanks to Christina from Graphisoft, who's been helping arrange things here, and to Bjorn, who instigated this and got it through, so thank you. So then we look ahead to the next General Assembly. As I mentioned, will be at Esri's headquarters in Redlands, Wednesday the 20th and Thursday the 21st of August 2025. Registration has not gone live on the website yet, but the form is up and ready, so there it is. If you know you're going, please do register. I mentioned our website having updates, and one of the pages that I actually hoped it would be ready by today, but unfortunately it's not. So hopefully next week there'll be a new page about the General Assembly of Implementers, and on there you will be able to register and see all the information about upcoming events and past events. So the information from this event, so the photos, the presentations, will all be available on that new webpage ASAP. So I haven't got a QR code to that page because it's not live yet, but I'll publish all the information from this event as the page goes live, hopefully next week. And we also plan to rename the General Assembly of Implementers to just the Implementers Assembly. Easier to say and more representative of what it is. We feel that having the word general in the title wasn't really appropriate. So if you start to see it called the Implementers Assembly in the future, you know this is what we're talking about. And I think that's my last slide. Yep.
So you switched this so not to have the approbation of AI, so that's great.
Yeah.
We were considering International Assembly of Implementers, or AIA, but thought you would like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question about HSE, Health, Safety, Environment, because in California in August it's like wildfire season. Isn't that maybe a problem? I don't know how red Redlands is in August.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, I'm not sure I can comment much on that, but should be fine. Yeah.